Hi there, I'm Ewan the Therapist. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is a YouTube channel where we explore all the issues in and around healing childhood trauma. So if that's something you're interested in, you can click on the subscribe button and you'll get updates on a regular basis. Now today, the subject we're covering is 5 unusual behaviors that can point to childhood trauma. And sometimes childhood trauma shows up in very overt ways, whether it's chronic addiction or self-harm. There are things that kind of are more obvious. But for many of us, we've developed subtle behaviors and defense mechanisms and creative adjustments that show up in our lives that don't overtly point to childhood trauma. But when we put them all together and we kind of like view them as a whole, then it can indicate that there are things that have happened that maybe shouldn't have, things that should have, that didn't. And I'd like to go through what these 5 are so you can kind of bring some awareness if you carry these. And then right at the end of the video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it up by looking at some of the ways we can approach this from a healing and a making progress perspective. Now, the first sign is what I'd call chronic people pleasing. So chronic people pleasing is that feeling where you're constantly feeling like in order to be okay, you need to make sure everyone else is okay. You need to make sure everyone else is happy. So for you, it would be almost like the worst feeling would be someone who you care about withdrawing their love from you, or withdrawing their affection, or withdrawing their care. So in order for that not to happen, there's this sense of like, I'm always looking at how I can please, what can I do? How can I kind of go out of my way to ensure that person's emotions are okay? And this often comes about in a household or a childhood environment where there's one caregiver or both that are very withdrawn, that it's very hard to kind of win their affection, attention, or love. And what we work out somewhere along the line is one way we can do that is pleasing them. We can kind of like, what can I do? How can I help you? So there's this sense of like, it's not enough just to be ourselves. We're growing up in a way where it feels like just being ourselves and being relaxed about ourselves is not enough. Our value is going to feel transactional. It's all about what we do for others. So that's people pleasing. The second one, which kind of sits next to this, and you could say this is a little bit adjacent, is that feeling of always apologizing. So there's this almost like chronic sense of guilt where I just feel kind of like guilty and I don't necessarily know why. So sometimes I'll say sorry when I just don't need to say sorry. I'll say sorry when I'm actually not the one that's done something wrong. So you get hit by another car who's run through a red light and you get out and say, I'm sorry. This type of thing. And this comes from environments where we've grown up walking on eggshells, where we feel like we can get in trouble at any moment. And we feel like in order to be safe, I have to constantly kind of admit that I'm wrong or constantly say sorry. And it comes from this sense of almost like unpredictability and a feeling of like there isn't really room for our emotions. So this constant apologizing is trying to fill this hole that there's something wrong with me and I got to constantly make it up. So people pleasing and constant apologizing kind of work hand in hand. The third is an impending sense of doom. And this isn't necessarily on the schizophrenic scale or conspiracy theory scale. This is just this feeling of like, I'm waiting for something to go wrong. Maybe everything in my life's quite good, but I can't shake this feeling of something bad's going to happen. And this impending sense of doom comes from growing up in a household where one or both carers may have either been violent or emotionally unpredictable, that sense of something is going to go wrong was probably accurate at that time because there was this sense of like there wasn't continuity and safety. So we become hypervigilant. Our nervous system is set to kind of look for danger. And even when it's not there, and even when I'm 51 years old and I'm still waiting for something to go wrong, and that's like a nervous system stance where like it did go wrong growing up, and now in order to be safe, I need to be vigilant. I need to be watching just in case. That's the feeling of impending doom. The fourth one is shutting down and withdrawing through conflict. So this may occur when you're just kind of feeling just very normal, everything's going well, and then suddenly someone criticizes you, or someone has a go at you, or someone critiques you on some kind of level, and it brings this immediate feeling of shut down. Like, I just don't want to do that. And I actually don't want to go to that place anymore because I don't want to see that person and potentially have that conflict. And if you can't get out of that conflict, there isn't an exit point, there's this sense of just closing down. It's like a freeze response. And this often occurs where we're growing up in a home where expressing our feelings or being authentic was met with punishment or withdrawal of love. So the underlying kind of unconscious fear is that if I take this conflict on, that if I dare to speak up and say my mind, I'm going to be punished, I'm going to be hurt. So it's better just to kind of shut down. So this can feel like a very disassociative state. It can feel like a fawn or a freeze state from a nervous system perspective, but it's just this feeling as soon as I feel like I'm in the spotlight here, I just shut down. Now, the fifth behavior is low confidence or deferring decisions to others. So this is that feeling of like, and again, I think it sits adjacent to the one we just spoke about. I think it comes from this feeling of like I freeze up when I have to take responsibility and make choices. So there's a sense of, look, I'll just let you decide. What do you want for dinner? You decide. Where do you want to go? You guys decide. There's that feeling of I don't want to be responsible and I don't want to have to kind of make the decisions. So you may find yourself always asking advice from people. What do you think I should do? Should I take this? Should I buy this car? There's even for small details, there's almost like a complete lack of confidence in your own judgment and your own sense of like certitude about what's right or what's wrong. And this can come from an environment where it felt like in order to give your opinion, you are either ridiculed or demeaned or made fun of. Maybe there was someone in the household that kind of knew everything. And you just learned to kind of just not express yourself. You just learned that kind of speaking up in a certain kind of way was always, it's always better to defer to an authority, whether it's my mum or my dad or someone here that knows more than me and I don't really know much. And we carry that into our adulthood. Now, as I'm saying all these things, if you're listening and think, yeah, okay, that makes sense, like that I can feel one or two of these behaviors relate to how I am, the question then is, what can we do to change? Now, in my practice, a lot of what I work on with people who present these kind of issues is more to do with the body. So although these are emotional and kind of mental patterns, they start really in our body. When you think of impending doom, or if you look at the feeling before you have to apologize or people please, there's a feeling in our bodies. These behaviors are lodged very much in our physiology. So to become conscious of how our body is feeding into our thoughts and feelings is very, very important. So that would be a first step. I think the second step, or in conjunction with that, is just bringing awareness. Because I think what a lot of us do is we rationalize our behaviors in the sense of, well, I'm just a caring person, or I do this because of that. And we lose confidence and capacity that, these creative adjustments worked when we were kids. They were necessary, but we don't really need them anymore. We don't need to be apologizing. We don't need to be worrying things are going to go terrible. We can let this go. So just bringing awareness to these issues of, okay, I'm doing that. What does that feel like in my body? What does that feel like in my legs, in my stomach, in my chest when I say sorry but I know I haven't done anything wrong? So it's becoming aware of the sensations in ourselves, what triggers these feelings, and starting to just look at this with a kind curiosity. And I think the third thing that can kind of really work to kind of help heal this, an awareness of you can. And this is, you might say, just like a broad scope view, that there is really hope. I know in my own personal life, I know in my clinical practice, that people can really change. We're not burdened with these issues. They're there, they worked at some point, now they don't work anymore. And with the right amount of patience and kindness and skill, we can get to a point where we feel very different and we experience our world in a very different way. So I'd say it's very important to have hope. It's very important to kind of hold on to that hope. If you're interested in that healing process, you can click on the link. You can go to my website, You and the Therapist, where I've got a lot of resources and information about these kind of things. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and take care of yourself, and bye-bye.